Hey guys, welcome back. It is 2026. Here's hoping that this is the year of Bethyl for us. We certainly hope so. And yeah, I hope everyone had a wonderful holiday, Christmas and New Year's. And it's a little quiet in the fandom right now, understandably so, because people are still on holiday and just starting to get back into the swing of things in the new year. But I'm sure things will pick up, especially once we get closer to having some new episodes of something drop. I kind of assume it's going to be Dead City first, and probably not going to get the fourth season of Daryl Dixon until a little bit later in the year. But we can always hope that it will be sooner than that. So today I'm going to go through some asks. I had a few of them that I never got around to answering before. While it's slower, I may only do one video a week. But as things pick up, or if I get more asks, or whatever the case may be, then I might do more. So I just reserve the right to do as many as my time and the fandom demands. So we'll see how it goes. All right, let's get to a few of these, remembering that some of them are kind of old because they came in before the holidays and I just didn't get around to answering them all. All right, Haley 13. Is it true that there's a deleted scene between Daryl and Beth in season 2? Not that I know of. I haven't ever seen or heard of a deleted scene between the two of them in that season. Um, there was a deleted scene between Beth and Carl, although actually now that I'm thinking about it, that was season 3. It was after Lori died. And I think the only real deleted scene we got with both of them in it was from Still, which was season 4, and it was just them walking through the woods and Beth talking about the red solo cups. And it was just like a 30-second clip that they ended up cutting out of the final episode. So that's the only one that I know of that features both of them. If I'm wrong and anybody does know about this, then let us know, but it's not something I've ever heard of. Okay. Hello, just wanted to point out that I recently saw a TikTok of Emily discussing that she won't be releasing her music by the end of this year because she has been busy with creating more music and working on new acting projects. She uploaded another TikTok and stated that she hasn't been in LA and that she is in the Northeast at this moment, most likely has to do with an acting project. No Dead City is currently filming in Massachusetts. Super interesting. Could, of course, not be related, but definitely raises some eyebrows. Yeah, for sure. I mean, don't get me wrong. The dates, production dates, and release dates can definitely change for projects all the time. So it's not totally uncommon, but what it does tell us is that for some reason they were planning to release her TWD record at the end of the year, at the end of 2025, so before now, and then it changed. And again, that wouldn't be super strange, happens all the time for little things, technicalities and sorts of things, but it's odd when you put it side by side with the fact that something changed about the spin-offs, that they were maybe originally going to do more seasons of Daryl Dixon, and it looks like they're heading back toward doing a reunion show where they all come back together. And so that just feels like because something changed there, that also changed when she was going to put out the album that had the TWD songs on it. And if that's the case, it does very much suggest that she's very involved in what's going on in the show right now. If this was just Emily, some character that was on the show a long time ago, releasing some songs because it's cool and it's fun, then she could release them whenever she wanted. You know what I mean? But clearly, there's more going into it than that. There's more planning going into it than that. And that does suggest that it has something to do with the timing of the show. So it's just more evidence that she's still involved and still has a lot to do with it. And that's a good thing for us. Not exactly a smoking gun or anything, but that's okay. I'm okay with that. So, yeah, thanks for sending that in. And yeah, I agree. If she's been in the Northeast, I know that she has been doing some acting projects that were just the typical stuff she's been doing since she left the show that are like really small acting parts and, kind of small shows. So she definitely could be working on those. But yeah, saying that she's in the Northeast of the US at the moment, and that's where Dead City was filming. Yeah, that definitely could be more evidence that she's involved in that somehow. So thank you for that. Okay, this one is really long. I'm going to scroll up. Many of you have seen this. Galadriel Jones did some stuff about it, but it is really fun to look at. And this is funny too that it was labeled as potentially mature content. It's because of all the blood that's on the props. There's really nothing violent in this. It's just bloody clothes that were used in the show. Okay, so Obadella 2. Hi again. So I've got some interesting stuff for you and the whole TD fandom to take a look at and theorize about. I'm crazy and bought a bunch of Beth's clothes at a huge auction they did recently. I bought the outfits from Still and Coda. I'm glad. I'm glad that they went to a TDer, so I'm glad you did that. That's super cool. So these are, I assume, what you bought. Not pictured are the jeans from Still, as well as another pair of tops from Still, the same yellow polo and white sweater, but before they got all bloodied up by Daryl. So here's some interesting things that I learned because there were some tags and other items from production that came with the clothing. I had always read that the post-prison fall episodes were aired out of order from how they were shot and written, and what came with the Still clothes confirms this. Still was actually episode 11 rather than 12. That's interesting, huh? Um, so you see, like, I think this is scene 23 for 11. So I believe the original order the episodes were meant to be was 411 Still, 412 Claimed, 413 The Grove, and 414 Alone. So there was meant to be a much greater sense of time passage between Still and Alone rather than the episodes airing back to back as they did. Further evidence of this is that the boots I got for Still and Alone are entirely different boots from each other. So that means not only did they stop and get fall clothes somewhere, but Beth got different boots as well between Still and Alone. I know for us Bethyl fans, just how much time passed between Still and Alone is a big deal for us. So I thought this was an interesting tidbit. Yeah, it really is. So let's go into the interesting stuff about the Death outfit. For Bite Cure Theory fans, those holes are indeed there, and they are actually on both sleeves. One of the sleeves, not the one on the cast arm though, actually has blood on the inside of these holes. I thought that was interesting because they took the time to put the blood on the inside of the sweater where the audience really wasn't going to see it. Yeah, I agree. I mean, and what's the point of this? I mean, yeah, I mean, it's the apocalypse and maybe the clothes are kind of tattered, but what's the point of putting a hole there that the audience is never going to see or really notice? I mean, we do notice it because we have you know, zaprudered and analyzed and deconstructed the scene where she is shot in still, or I mean, in Coda so many times. But if not for that, what's the point of specifically putting that there? You know what I mean? There's got to be a function for it. The fact that it's on both sleeves makes me think one of two possibilities. A, they hadn't decided which arm they wanted her to get bitten on, or B, these were holes that Beth made herself to basically make herself a pair of makeshift gloves. I'm honestly not sure. Only one of them has the blood stains on the inside. Now on the Coda boots. They came with a tag on them that said not to be used. Interesting. For SFX test 5/2. So here's my question. What SFX shot that we saw would there have even been in Coda of her in these boots? She only has them on during the exchange and when Daryl carries her out at the end. I suppose the gunshot is an SFX shot, but what would the what boots she's wearing have anything to do with that? All right, I decided to look this up because I was curious. And for those who don't know, an SFX shot is just a like a CGI kind of shot or special effects. That's what the SFX stands for, special effects shot. And I wanted to show you this, and this isn't actually popping up the same way it did when I first searched for it, but I literally typed this in, why would costumes be used for SFX shots but not? And it came up with just like the little short suggestion that said regular shots. So it was interesting that AI kind of predicted what I was asking for there. And this is what came up. So it says they might be used in special effects shots for several technical and creative reasons that wouldn't typically apply to regular practical shots. The key distinctions lie in the need to accommodate the demands of special effects technology, create illusions, and streamline post-production workflows. So the first thing it talks about is hiding equipment and motion capture. I think that's a little bit less likely to have been the reason because I don't think they really used motion capture for her getting shot. And I mean, maybe there was equipment that needed to be hid. It could be, but not that we saw. And there's just not anything obvious that they would need to hide equipment to me. So, and I don't think they use green screen either. The durability and safety could be a thing that they wanted them to look a certain way, but during the shot, she was wearing more sturdy shoes or something like that. But I actually think that these down here make more sense. So they can be tailored to exact specifications to ensure consistency across different shooting environments. By that, they mean filming, not getting shot, right? It's hard not to read it that way when we're talking about Beth's scene where she got shot. And simplifying work for the VFX team, creating illusions, practical effects themselves designed with forced perspective, specific padding, or hidden mechanisms to achieve in-camera illusions, make an actor look disproportionately large or small. And then cost efficiency in post-production. While specialized costumes add to production costs, they can ultimately save significant time and money in the post-production phase by providing a cleaner plate for the visual effects artist to work with. Removing unwanted equipment digitally is often more difficult and time-consuming than using a costume design to hide it from the start. Okay, so there's nothing here that immediately go, oh, that's what happened. That's what they did in the scene, because there's nothing obvious where they needed to remove equipment or, anything like that necessarily. But the fact remains that they had a separate set of boots for the SFX shot. So that tells you that no matter what it was, there was something that they were doing that needed that. And to me, the biggest thing, the most obvious thing I could point to there is just that maybe it's something we haven't seen yet. Maybe there's a lot more to that scene than what actually aired in the episode. And that's why they would need these more complicated shots. But while I was reading it, I also came up with a few other things. This creating illusions one is interesting. Designed with forced perspective and making an actor look disproportionately large or small. I mean, it just reminds me of the Dutch angles that they used in that scene where everything was skewed and everything was off. I mean, maybe they had a specific set of boots for her to wear in order to add to that vibe in the scene. Which could have been true of other characters too, but we're just looking at Beth's costume here. Maybe the other characters also had special shoes that just made things look more eerie, maybe somewhat more elongated. I don't know. And then this last one, I mean, I don't know, maybe this is neither here nor there, but, and I really don't know anything about the visual effects in post-production. Like, that's not something that I know anything about, but it just tells me too, I mean, even if it's just a matter of, okay, this doesn't have a whole lot to do with what happened in the scene. It's just a matter of we need clean boots to work off of so that we can make the scene look right. I mean, that could be because they need to put in the blood spatter with the computer and it needs to look a certain way. Or, they want something clean to be able to point to later on and say, look, the blood spatter was this way, not that way, and therefore what happened makes sense. You know what I mean? Like, it could be anything. And of course, this is all just conjecture, but bottom line, it shows that they needed this to create a very particular look in post-production, and that they are being very careful about what the final look of the scene was and what actually went into the episode. So they're being very nuanced and very intentional about what they wanted us to see in that episode. So that once again negates the argument that they suddenly just decided to kill her off willy-nilly, because that would not be being very intentional and they just really don't care, right? Clearly that's not the case. And then, of course, a lot of the skeptics, when we, give all of our evidence, they go, well, movie producers aren't medically trained and it's just, bad CSI and it's just not realistic. But this is showing that they take a lot of pains for these special effects shots. And, we already know that they, Nicotero has said that they have medical consultants, that they're very careful about the way things look, that they try to be as realistic as possible. They literally have like anatomy books to go through, like, when they do a walker bite and we're seeing like muscle and sinew and all that gross stuff, they are very, very careful about it. And they are very careful to be realistic. So we already know that, but this is just more evidence of that they're going out of their way to be very meticulous about what we see and the way that it looks so that they can come back and point to it at some point. So that's the main thing that I'm getting out of this. That's the only thing I can think of that why the boots would matter, what I just explained. And last but not least, there is on this sweater, my mind is probably playing tricks on me, but I swear it says Dead Beth TD. Yeah, I don't know what that says. It does look like TD. It also looks like it could be a P. and the second one could be an O, but it looks like something was written over the top. Like maybe originally it said TD and then they changed it to PO or something, but yeah, I have no idea what that means. So yeah, thanks for sending these in. Like I said, I've seen most of them because Galadriel Jones sent them to me when the auction first happened. But this is really interesting, and it's a really it's a fun window into how they go about doing this and what the costumes look like and all of that. So I'm excited for them to finally explain it to us, and I think this will all make a lot more sense. The holes in the sweater are still just really compelling to me. I mean, it is interesting that they're in both sides. Um, yeah, but I mean, this one especially, it just looks like the holes in David's shirt, and he was bitten, and I think that that is purposeful. Like I have a hard time dismissing that because it just keeps coming back to me. So yeah, thank you so much for sending these in. These are really, really fun. And anyone else who wants to send in anything or theorize about it, we are all here for it. So please do so. Okay, I'm curious what your opinion is of the fandom's reaction, read backlash, to Coda. For those of us who believe this was all a predetermined plan and Beth is actually not dead, we look at that episode and Beth's story arc in one way, as a foundation to a greater arc. But I think it's safe to say the GI does not share our broader view of the master plan. I know at the time people were pissed about Beth's death, but even to this day you see breakdowns and prominent YouTubers and critics calling that episode a mistake, bad writing, and the moment TWD broke trust with fans and created a predictable 1, 8, 9, 16 formula for character deaths. Do you give these takes any merit, even believing that the storytelling is not about Beth's death but a fake out? Even believing she's still alive, do you think this is a good storytelling, or do you think trust actually was broken with the audience? Do you think Gimple and co had conversations or concerns about the backlash? I'm just fascinated by the fact that this episode seems to leave a bad taste in people's mouths, whether you loved Beth or thought she was annoying. Um, oh, that's a lot to unpack. Yeah, so definitely the GA does not serve or does not share our broader view of the master plan, so certainly. But what's interesting to me, and this is really fascinating. There was the Spoons campaign, and there were a lot of people who demanded they bring her back. And the fact that they didn't right away and that now it's been 10 years, of course, people just think they didn't do it, right? But it says something about the fandom and that we're kind of used to death fake outs at this point, not only from TWD, but from other shows too, and other, pop culture things, that they didn't mind that she had been shot and was apparently dead. They were demanding that Gimple bring her back. There was even, and I do remember this, and I wish I had a reference for it because without it, it's kind of hearsay, but I do remember, I swear I remember reading, uh, what do you call it? It was an interview that Gimple gave where people, it was not too long after this happened. So it was still season 5 or maybe early season 6. It was really soon after Coda happened. And he basically said they were working on it. So like whoever was interviewing him said, the people are demanding you bring her back. What do you say about that? And Gimple said, well, we're working on it. And it sounded like a confirmation that she was coming back. But again, I don't know that I read that in the actual interview form. Maybe it was something someone posted, in which case it may not be real. So I can't say for sure, but I remember that. And so it really felt like, it was just a matter of time. Well, all this time has passed now and she still isn't back. And of course, we have not broken faith with that, but you understand why most people would, or just think that, they just chalk it up to it was terrible writing. We wish they hadn't done that, yada, yada. So you're asking if I think it was a mistake or not. So let me first say that I don't think that there was much choice in the matter. I've talked about this before, but Gimple was told that he needed to get through all of the comic book material before he could spend time on characters that were his creation. So I don't think he was being given much of a choice. I mean, there was a lot of setup of these characters. Of course, Beth and Daryl, but also even like Rick and Michonne. Obviously, they're both in the comic books, but they were not together in the comic books. They were not a family. And so there was a lot of even setup of the way Gimple was going to do things in season 4. So I think he was basically told that he could do that. He could do a setup of things to foreshadow them, but overall, he was not going to be able to spend time on that, and he was going to need to get through the comic book material first before he went back to that. So I think that if he could have brought her back earlier, if he could have done a death fake out and brought her back, a season or two later, he would have, but he wasn't being given that option. Now, you could always say, well, just don't kill her off then, but I think this is just how he wanted to craft things, and it was like if he wanted to do it his way, this was the only way he could do it. So there is that. So I don't think it's a matter of them sitting down and being like, should we do this? Should we not? I mean, I think it was like, okay, this is the way we have to do it if we want to do it. And they did. So that's what they did. Um, did they break trust with the audience? To some extent, yes. I mean, just the fact that it's taking so long to bring her back. I mean, like I said, you can't really blame people for thinking that it's not going to happen or that that was terrible. When she does return, I think that it's going to go a long way toward mending that, and that people will. I mean, you're of course going to have people who are going to say, we're going to hear this, right? So just prepare for it. We're going to have people who say, oh, it's because the show has lost so many viewers and it's been going for 10 years and it's lost momentum and they don't know what to do. So now they're just bringing back dead characters, right? You're going to have people who say that, but we'll know better because we've been tracking it for so long. And those are just the haters who are annoyed, that sort of thing. And that's why I really hope that when they bring her back, that Gimple comes out and says something, even if it's like, he may not give us very much details because he'll have more story to tell. And he's, not going to be, Gimple and his spoilers, they're always very, very vague. But I would love it if he would just come out and say, you know what, this has been the plan since season 5. That's all I want. It's just that one line. It just tell us that we can say, boom, thank you. You know what I mean? And then we can point out the signs that have been there all along. And we'll have more people listening to us now. We really will because of that. Anyway, so do I think they broke some trust with the audience? Yeah, I think it was kind of inevitable. You could say the same thing about Glenn's death. A lot of people dropped off after Glenn's death because it was just too heavy and too emotional. And literally, when you leave a bad taste in someone's mouth, it creates like sorry to get into the weeds of the psychology here, but it creates like a pathway in their brain, and they literally lose their desire to watch that show anymore, right? So, I mean, that can happen anytime you have a bad experience, and sometimes it has nothing to do with the show. Like, let's say you were watching an episode of, I don't know, Friends or something, and during that episode, you got hurt. You were walking into the living room and you fell and you cut your leg and you were in a lot of pain and you had to go to the hospital. You're actually going to have kind of a bad feeling about Friends, at least for a little while, because you had a bad experience while watching it, right? That's just psychology. And you can get over it, just go watch it and have good experiences and then you'll move past it. But when Glenn died, it was such a negative experience for most people because it was so brutal and it was so sad. And it felt so much like a real life loss to people that a lot of people dropped off after that. So in that sense, Beth was kind of the same way. I think they did lose a lot of trust with people. And the interesting thing is that it's interesting to me, as you say, that so many people were upset by it and to this day are not over it. What that actually shows is not only that they loved the character and that they wanted Daryl and her to find happiness together, but it also, to me, shows that the setup was there. We know that because we've analyzed it to death, but when you guys, I write fiction myself, and when you set something up and then don't pay it off, it is breaking trust with your audience. That's like the biggest no-no, to set something up and then not pay it off. And that's what they did. They set it up 100 different ways, and then it felt like they just killed her off without paying it off. And that creates this, because it created this expectation, and then the audience didn't get it. It wasn't paid off. They didn't receive what they thought they would receive in the story. And yeah, that pisses people off. Like, you're going to lose, whether it's readers or viewers, they're going to be annoyed by that. Now, what I will say is that that's not the end of the story. So that's not actually what he did. He didn't actually not pay it off. But of course, people don't know that yet. And, you can make the argument, if you're losing your audience, does it really matter? Because you're losing your audience. So I think that it was a big gamble to do that. It really was. And they did lose a lot of people, and those people will come back. And that's why I really hope that they show us what they were always planning so that people can see it, But at the end of the day, I mean, Gimple may have had concerns about the backlash. I'm sure they knew there would be one because of the way they set it up. But again, I don't think that he had much control over that. It was just something they were going to have to plan for and deal with, you know. But yeah, I agree with you that it's something that is still very relative today. And I've read more than once in articles and publications that have nothing to do with Team Delusional, right? That have nothing to do with us or believing Beth is coming back or anything, that most viewers of The Walking Dead see that episode, Coda, as not only the most depressing and the saddest and everything, but they see it as the most iconic moment of the entire series, of the entire franchise. The most iconic moment to most viewers is Daryl carrying Beth out of the hospital. That says a lot. It says a lot that people were that invested and were so heartbroken with that image. And yeah, that's why I think it will work really well when they bring her back. Of course, we're going to have the naysayers and the people that grumble and the other shippers who, the second she comes back, are going to know exactly what's going on and are going to be pissed. Of course, we're going to have those people. But they are such a small minority of the fandom. The vast majority are going to be ecstatic when she comes back. So, really interesting questions. I kind of rambled about it for a while. I hope that answered it for you. And yeah, I'm just excited to see how it will unfold, and it will be really fascinating to see how people react. So, thank you for that. Okay, last one, and then we'll wrap up for this week. Was the funeral home trap ever explained? I know Gimple said on The Talking Dead that the mortician died out on a run, but has he or anyone ever confirmed that it was a trap? All of that just seems hinky to me. Beth literally walking into a trap at the start of the episode has all the narrative subtlety of a sledgehammer. For them to say the funeral home wasn't a trap just doesn't work. Yeah, no, I agree. But why not ever reveal in the hospital arc that the cops were the ones that set the trap? Gorman's story about finding her in the road was obviously a lie. It's clear to me, at least, that she was fighting a walker and he hit her over the head or hit her with his car. The trap element just feels like a loose thread. Then again, the funeral home setup being a Grady trap feels wrong too. Setting a trap an hour outside of Atlanta and they just so happen to check it the day after Daryl and Beth show up. The place had been cleaned recently too, so how often did the cops go out and restock or tidy a trap an hour away? The story just doesn't hang together. Do we have any official explanation from the powers that be on this one? If not, what is your best guess about what the funeral home really was, who it really belonged to, and whether it will ever become important again? Okay, great question. And we have talked a little bit about the funeral home recently, but what we know for sure is that I believe one of the powers that be did confirm that the person who was living in the funeral home was at Grady. So it's probably one of the people who died at Grady early on, maybe even that first person that died, when Beth was with Edwards and he passed away. It was just a patient that passed away. That might have been the funeral home guy. So I think more than likely what happened is that the cops happened upon this funeral home guy outside the city, wherever, took him back to Grady, but they were coming back to check the funeral home to see if anybody else would come back to it. It's also possible if there was more of a trap than that set up, like I think that's the most reasonable thing, and it was just really bad timing for Beth and Daryl. But if there was more of a trap set up than that, then it could be that they tripped it somehow when she stepped in the small game trap, or maybe when they walked through the cemetery, maybe there was something set up that tripped let the cops know that somebody was there. So yeah, either way, I think that they did know that Beth and Daryl were there. I mean, the walkers coming up onto the porch the way they do is the thing that's always been really crazy to me, because walkers don't just do that out of nowhere. They had to be following either someone or something, and you did hear the dog barking, but the dog would not have led the walkers to the house, that unless the cops were using the dog as bait in some way, and the walkers would follow that. But there was just stuff that we couldn't see because we were seeing it from Beth and Daryl's perspective and they couldn't see it. So of course we couldn't see it. And I think that's the whole answer for what you're asking here. Whatever this leads to, whether it's a connection to the CRM or something else, the powers that be didn't want to explain it here. They wanted it to be weird. They wanted it to be mysterious. They wanted it to be like, they put in just enough that it's like, oh yeah, in the apocalypse that would happen, so that people are fairly satisfied with it, but it's enough weirdness too to know that there must have been something more going on there, but we don't know what. Um, this is something I've talked about before and something that I think would be beneficial for everyone to kind of try to wrap their heads around. And that is that any given episode is told through the point of view of a particular character. And that's not always obvious because in any given episode, they show scenes where the point of view character isn't necessarily there. So it doesn't feel like that would be the case, but it really is. Okay. So we've always said that Coda is actually seen from Rick's point of view. That's why we don't get as much of Daryl's reaction. We only see a little bit of Beth. The only real episode that came through Beth's point of view in season 5 was Slabtown. Then we see her a little bit in episodes like 7 and 8 and 8, before the final prisoner exchange in the hallway, but it's not from her point of view. We're just getting little tiny bits and pieces of her that are necessary for us to understand what's going on in the story. And that's always how it is. Okay, so, we know that they, a certain episode might be about one character or another, and, maybe this one's about Rick and Michonne and Carl, and we don't see Beth and Daryl there, but it's actually more than that. Even when the group is all together, there's usually one character, and we're seeing it through their point of view. And you can tell that because we're only seeing and knowing and understanding what that character does, not what all the characters see and know and understand. And that's kind of what was happening here, right? We're only seeing things through Beth and Daryl's perspective, and then in season 5 through various team family members, but we're not seeing things. What would you call that? In writing, they call it an omniscient narrator, which means you see everything equally. You know what everyone knows. You see what everyone sees. That is not the case here. Okay, so we are not seeing everything from the point of view of the Gradients, of Dawn, of Edwards, right? Of Gorman. We are only seeing what Beth sees. And that's why things are strange, because she probably didn't completely understand what was going on there. Maybe she understood more than the audience did, but it's very possible that even she didn't understand completely what was going on there, and she won't until she, wakes up there again and all of that. So I think that that's a lot of it. They didn't want to explain it. Probably in the show they had their reasons, at Grady for not telling her what it was. They were definitely trying to manipulate her, so they would want to only have her understand what they understood. So I agree. I mean, I think it definitely was a trap. We just don't understand everything that went into it. And I think that's something that they are holding back and will explain when she returns. I think that there is so much more going on there certainly than we realize as the viewers, but even maybe than the characters realize. And so, it's definitely suspicious and it's weird and it doesn't make sense and it doesn't add up. And that is a big part of the reason that I, aside from all the other evidence we have, that I do think that she will return, because Gimple really doesn't leave loose ends like this. He always goes back and finishes them eventually. Remember that he brought back Morales, who was a minor character from season 1. He brought that guy back in season 8 just to kill him off because he didn't want that to be a loose end. Okay, so keep that in mind. We have a ton of loose ends around what happened with Beth back in season 4 and 5. And we have a lot of evidence that there is whole scenes, whole sequences that they filmed that we have not seen and that have never been released as deleted scenes. And all of that has to come out at some point. So I officially believe it will be this year in 2026. And let's all try to manifest that together, right? So thank you for your question. I hope I answered everything, even though some of the answer is we don't really know. But yeah, I think that it is something that we should definitely keep in mind and keep an eye on, because they will tell us eventually. It's just a matter of whenever they finally get around to bringing her back and airing those scenes. Okay? All right, guys, I've run kind of long today, but that is okay. Really glad to be back. And please, as always, if there's anything you want to know about, any questions, anything you want me to research, anything like that, send it in and I will be happy to do that. Otherwise, I will see you in the next video. Everyone have a wonderful day.